Heyo, welcome to the new face of New Comic Book Day Book Club. My name's Alec. This is White Whale Comics, and with me, not as always, but this week we got Chris from I Got Issues. What's up, buddy?
Well, what's going on? Happy to be here. So sorry that John can't make it, but
I think we're for the better.
is that I don't want to say that because John's gonna get he's probably watching right now from his graduation.
Yeah,
You just really hurt his feelings right now.
Oh, John knows. John knows I love him. But you know, we've got a special bond too. This stupid notification about how Hangouts is going away. I don't know how we're going to YouTube anymore in a couple months, so that's going to be fun.
I see. I don't know much about this because I kind of haven't been on a lot, but I heard someone talking about it that you're not going to be able to broadcast from Hangouts anymore.
Yeah.
So they have to be replacing it with something else. No.
As far as I know, Skype is what you can do, but maybe they're going to roll out something. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's all the same company.
I was just going to say that Google doesn't own Skype, right?
No, Microsoft does. But
so why would they?
Google owns YouTube.
Right. So why would Google get rid of Hangouts and have you use the competition to get on YouTube?
That's a question for some marketing people that I don't know a thing about. Doesn't make any sense to me.
They should come on Hangouts and explain it to us.
We got some great people in the chat already. We got TJ the Slab Dragon Watson was in here first. Need Mo Comics, Barbarian Kung Fu. Sammy Strikes Back is here. Hi, Sammy. We got Tina K. We got Outcast Raptor. And we got Comic Head 84, Sam I Am Comics, and Gray Matter Hulk. Perry Comics does say Google is going to replace it with another program. That makes sense.
Now we can be less upset.
Mythos is also here joining us. We are talking about Usagi Yojimbo, #1 by Stan Sakai.
How do you say it?
Usagi Yojimbo. Do you say Usagi?
Usagi.
You say Usagi?
Usagi.
You're probably right. Let me start that over. Hey, we're talking about Usagi Yojimbo.
It was a big discussion yesterday was how to properly pronounce it. I don't think it matters, to be honest. I don't really.
That sounds more correctly Japanese.
But we're a bunch of white guys, so
we can, yeah. So what do we know?
We could just gringo it up and say whatever we want.
This is a variant cover. I wanted to get the Stan Sakai cover. I mean, this cover is super cool and happy to have it. But I went to my old LCS from when I used to live in Rhode Island to say bye to him. And this was the only copy he had left, so he sold it to me for cover price, which I thought was really cool. So I still need to track down a regular one. But be that as it may, you can see behind Chris the regular cover.
Let me get it. This is the Stan Sakai cover,
which I think is really nice. There's also a bunch of like store exclusive variants, and there's a Virgin Stan Sakai cover, which is different. It's different art. It looks real nice.
There's so many. I was actually shocked. And you know what's crazy is that they put them all on the back of the comic, and there's books that aren't back here that are available also.
Oh, really? There's more than that?
So there's 20 books in the back of this. If you look at yours, anyone who's here, yeah, there's 20 books, 20 covers, and that's not even all of them, because there's ones I've seen on eBay or from people that have other store exclusives that are not here. So I don't know if like they agreed to print them after this was already determined or what. Can I just say that the J. Scott Campbell one is insanely attractive?
The bottom left is the one that I want.
Yeah, that one's really nice. This one's pretty cool. This one's pretty cool too.
Yeah. There's a bunch of cool ones. We got more people rolling into the chat. Mr. Garrel, TMC Comics, the Retro Savage with a bunch of different things in his name now. Looks cool. 90 MF Comics. YouTube is 90. What is up, Chad? So someone said TMC Comics says, I saw Usagi went with color interiors this month. Not only that, apparently IDW they said they are reissuing all of the old issues with color interiors. Do you read that?
Yeah, I did read that. I'm just curious as to whether or not they're going to do some sort of like big omnibus to do that, or if they're going to actually be like filtering out single issues to try to get people to spend more money.
Yeah, I would buy an omnibus. I would not buy individual issues.
To be perfectly honest, and I guess we'll talk more about this later. As someone who's read it for a long time, it was really weird reading it in color.
Yeah. I feel the same way about Bone. When they reissued Bone in color, it just didn't look right.
Yeah, something about the way the art looks in black and white just feels right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I almost feel like you lose something in the characters and the shading and everything when you just start adding color. Maybe that's just me.
Chad said he was able to get the Eastman variant. That's awesome. We were just talking about that before we went on the air. It's a great cover. Yeah, I mean, the artwork is still like out of this world, top-notch cartooning.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I personally haven't read as much of the old stuff, it sounds like, as you have, so I didn't have that connection or that disconnect seeing it in color. I thought it looked good. I definitely prefer, as a lot of artwork, I prefer it in black and white for comics. But I mean, it's just the way, you know, I hate to keep comparing it to Jeff Smith, but it like their level of cartooning compared to a lot of other artists is just next level.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Like not just illustration, but like when I say cartooning, I don't just necessarily refer to the style that they draw in, but cartooning as an art of comics. Knights of Old said White Whale Comics was in a warehouse. No, I was robbed. I'm kidding. I'm moving.
I was robbed. Well, yeah, I mean, you have a much more artistic background in terms of understanding that stuff too. You know, for me, it's more of just what do my eyes like, or what do I find attractive or appealing, and just something about Stan's artwork that sometimes seems really simple, but it's not. And he can put so much on a page. And I almost think that you see more of that when it's black and white. Like when there's a fight scene where there's like 10 ninjas and they're all fighting, when there's no color to differentiate things, you have to be very particular and specific in the way that you draw stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that takes a lot of talent, because you could draw a jumble of bodies when their bodies are going to be differentiated by different colored costumes or something. I feel like it just makes it so much easier to just draw something simple. And I don't know, it's just impressive the way that he draws, and the fact that he's been doing it so good for so long.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It is something that you have to consider it much more closely when you're drawing it in black and white to make sure that it is readable. And you know, I complain a lot about stuff on this show about how panels aren't readable, or pages don't flow correctly, or like things don't make sense from panel to panel. Watch last week's episode for more on that. There was not a moment of confusion for me in this issue at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's just he writes well, and the story flows well, and I think that he's so in tune with his characters that it's so easy for him to stay on point. throughout his comic books. So I think that's, I mean, it's pretty evident in this book. But what did you think overall about this issue? I mean, since it is our.
So I'm looking back in the comments. Someone said something that I have now lost. I want to make sure I give credit to the right. Perry Comics says, I might be in the minority, but I felt like nothing really happened in this book. For me, like, it felt directly like, I mean, a much more, I don't want to say like for kids version, but like more accessible samurai movie.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It because it focused so much on like the culture, and there's a whole thing in the back about how, you know, this whole culture of this theater that Usagi watches. He really takes into account that, like, the culture of the samurai and the culture of Japan at in the time period, that like, yeah, not a lot happened. It was definitely a setup issue, but it was still very like beautiful and lovingly crafted, based around this art form. So it was kind of like using comics as an art form to express respect for this other puppet theater art form, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, two things that I wanted to say during the show. I mean, first of all is, you know, Stan created Usagi in 1984, so he's been around for a long time, and one of the things is that it's based very historically on feudal Japan. It takes a lot of cues from Japanese movies, specifically some Kurosawa stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're familiar with any of those movies. Um, and he's actually won like awards from like academic institutions for his work because of how much historical accuracy is in what he does, that it's considered that like kids can learn from it, which is, to be honest, the reason why I was allowed to read it when I was a kid. Because it had relevancy to, my mom was Japanese, and so it had relevancy to, you know, something that was historically related to me, and so it was something that I was allowed to read for those reasons. So I think if you keep that in mind when you read it, it's not just like a beat 'em up comic book, and it's not just like a bunny with a sword like stabbing people. And so I think maybe part of what some people, I think because it moved to IDW and they made a big deal about this new launch and issue number 1, it drew a lot of people in, and I think that's a good thing. But I think a lot of people were expecting to open it up and see him like stabbing ninjas.
Mm-hmm.
Or
that's just not what it's about.
Right. Or now, what I expected and what didn't happen is I sort of expected, with all this hoopla around an issue number 1, I thought that he was going to kind of take it back a little bit and maybe kind of give a refresher.
Like reintroduce the character a little bit.
I almost thought like maybe an issue 1 sort of semi origin story type
Mm-hmm.
of thing was going to take place.
Yeah, I did too.
I don't mind that he didn't do that because I'm familiar with the character, but I think a lot of people who pick this book up today are going to feel like Perry said, like, what did I just read? Like, nothing happened.
Yeah.
And I also think for people that aren't familiar with the way that Stan writes, if you look at your book at the top, it says book 1 of 3. So the way Stan writes Usagi, it's very episodic. So he doesn't have some long ongoing storyline. You're not going to have a 20 issue storyline with like a Justice League book. You're not going to have a 100 issue storyline like a Tom King on Batman. It's going to be 3 issues or 5 issues or 7 issues. So this story that we started today is going to see its conclusion in the 3rd issue. And then the 4th issue is going to start a new storyline. So it also makes it very easy to jump in and out of the book if you want to. Because you're never really missing that much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And Perry Comics says that's exactly what he expected, was some sort of origin story or a beat 'em up. I don't know which one. And Sammy Strikes Back says, issues I appreciate, you always have something relevant playing in the background.
Yeah, there's Stan Sakai back here drawing Usagi. Interviewed. Thank you.
I really like how, going back to the cultural significance and everything like that, is he uses all of the actual Japanese terminology rather than, changing it so it makes sense, but then he puts the definitions down below. So us, as you described us as gringos, can still identify what they're saying while still showing the respect to the culture, because those terms are very specific and they have a meaning to them beyond what the word means in a lot of sense.
Yeah. Which is, you're right, it's very cool. And it ties into that, why you can actually learn something from reading them, because it does that, because it's not dumbing it down or forgoing that terminology to make it easier to digest. It becomes something that you can really appreciate and learn from.
Yeah. And some people may get mad at me for saying this, but I feel like as Americans, this is not something that we can relate to, is this idea of this deep-rooted culture, because we're such a melting pot that, like, there's nothing equivalent besides maybe like the Wild West that's like strictly American. But even that's just like a thing that existed. It's not something that is so cultivated and so appreciated. And the fact that he has so much pride for the culture of his heritage is, I think, really lovely.
I also think, though, at the same time, it's something that this book can be something that we should be able to digest, because, like, I mean, it's funny that you just brought it up, but the Wild West, like you said, is something that is very, like, culturally American, right? It's something that we have, and John Wayne and these old Dirty Harry, like, not Dirty Harry, like the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, this stuff is stuff that we sort of grew up on, and the reality is that these stories with Usagi, these Japanese stories, they're the Japanese version of the Wild West.
Well, you brought up Kurosawa.
Right.
The Magnificent
Seven and
is
Samurai.
Is Seven Samurai. Like, not even unapologetically, it is a remake.
A complete copy. It's a complete Western copy of a Kurosawa film. The concept is the same, right? The stories are the same. It's just a different setting. So it's, and once again, like I said, Stan Sakai himself has even said that he's had storylines and stuff that he's really taken from Kurosawa films,
right?
To put into his storylines and kind of follow that samurai tale. And for those that don't know, just because we're clear here, his first name's not Usagi. His first name's it's Miyamoto. So he's a Ronin, which is a masterless warrior. He served a shogun, and then, whether that be because the shogun dies or because he's no longer in power, you become a masterless warrior. And a lot of times they travel doing odd jobs or protecting people or stuff like that. And that's sort of the basis of the character. He's sort of roaming Japan, and he just sort of stumbles into these stories. That's why the storyline makes so much sense when it switches from one thing to another, because he's not generally in the same place very long.
Right.
Which I think is important for people who aren't familiar with the background to understand why there's no sort of, he doesn't have a house. There's not necessarily a very specific set of returning characters, because he's always sort of on the move.
Yeah, he's roaming.
Very much so.
Going back very briefly, because I don't want to forget to mention this, to the cartooning aspect of it, I just saw in your background, he was drawing a word bubble and made me think of it. When the character at the beginning kills the big demon, the demon has a word bubble that's a skull, and
Like he's dead.
Yeah, that I love that. That's perfect.
That's sort of his way of showing that people are dead. It's usually like an X'd out skull or something, like to show that they bit it. But
I don't know. Like for me, there was really nothing for me to critique about this book. Besides maybe the fact that it was in color. Like
yeah.
It's just like rock solid work. And I mean, for someone who's been working in the business as long as he has, especially on the same character, like you'd expect. I mean, this could have gone one of two ways. Like he is a master at the craft, so you expect that it's going to be good. But at the same time, he's been doing the character for so long. It's like, have you burnt out on it? But I don't think so. It's like a band coming back together after so many years to release a new album, and you're like, oh, is this going to be a wreck?
It's like Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac's always going to be good. Said that with a straight face. So.
Yeah, good job.
Really. But no, I agree. Well, you know what? It's funny is that, like I said too, if you go into it expecting like fights and stabbing and stuff every issue, you are gonna be disappointed because that's not the basis of how Stan Sakai writes. But if you go back and reread it, for those of you who felt like not a lot happened, you'll see that actually a ton of stuff happened in this book. You start the story by being introduced to a demon hunter. So we're setting the stage there that there's a demon play here and he's being sent to a specific location. And then you have Usagi seeing this play where clearly in that scene where he's having tea with this blind guy who runs the thing, he can tell that something's off. And you as the reader can kind of tell that something is off as well, right?
Yeah, and even if like you don't pick up on it yourself through the way the character is acting, the way he draws Usagi's expressions and stuff when he's talking to the blind guy who's running the show, like you can tell through seeing Usagi that okay, he senses something's wrong.
Right. And then that parlays into him bumping into the demon hunter. They know each other. There's some history there, and him knowing and really setting the stage even more so that like, oh, you're here, so there is definitely something wrong.
Yeah. And then they're like,
that last panel kind of is that cliffhanger of like, oh, okay, this is about to get real. So I think a lot happened in those pages to set this story.
I really like the moment where they're like, oh, let's go to an inn. How about this one? He's like, no, that one's run by a demon.
Yeah.
He's like,
he doesn't need people anymore.
Doesn't need people anymore. But and then you see the demon, and he's got like these big teeth. He's like, come on in.
He definitely still eats people.
Yeah, 100%. It's just a great little moment. I don't know. I wouldn't say 10 out of 10 for me because it's just I don't want to say like it didn't surprise me because that doesn't sound like a positive thing, but like it's what I wanted out of it. It was very good.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only two things that I would knock it for is and this first one isn't necessarily a knock, man. It's just something I said already. I'm just so used to not seeing it in color that it's just odd. It's weird for me, and I don't think that's necessarily a knock. It's just something that now like I have to get used to seeing it in color.
Yeah, I was gonna just ask, do you think you'll be able to get used to it?
I think I will. I think it's only going to take a few issues to just be like, okay, this is in color now. Like,
yeah,
it's not like I can't read this. It's in color. It's just, it was odd to open it up. And I was wondering before the book came out if it was going to be in color or not. I actually didn't know the answer to that until I opened the book up today at the shop and was like, oh, okay, it is. It's in color.
Yeah, well, I didn't even open it till I got home because since I got this incentive one, it was pre-boarded.
So that was a little weird. But the only other thing I would say is that for those of you who like the story or maybe have some history with the character, it was published under Dark Horse for a long time. And for people that don't know, Stan Sakai owns all the rights to Usagi. So anywhere he goes, he can reprint anything he wants. That's why IDW can reprint everything he's ever done, because he owns it. So now that he's working with them, he can say, go ahead, reprint this stuff. And then the second he leaves, they can't print it anymore because it goes with him.
Yeah.
With that being said, he was with Dark Horse for an incredibly long time, and he was still writing Usagi up until the end of 2018 in Dark Horse. And the last story that he wrote for them was a 7-issue storyline called The Hidden, which you can get in probably trade form for like $12, and I'm sure the single issues aren't that expensive. It was probably one of my favorite Usagi stories that I've read in the last few years. So it seemed odd that he went out at Dark Horse on one of what I thought was one of his best stories. And then this one, maybe, even though it was good, it didn't start as strong as I probably would have liked. So
compared to the last thing he did.
And that's what I'm doing. So comparatively, I give it that knock on, once again, it's not bad at all. It's just, to me, a little bit less than what I just read from him.
Mm-hmm.
And that last one, The Hidden, just not to spoil the whole thing, but the whole 7-issue storyline, it's about Christianity being introduced into feudal Japan.
Oh, wow.
Which is, it's very cool the way that they do it. So anyone wants to check that out, I would totally recommend checking that story out. And you'll really get a feel too for the character a little bit more, so that you understand a little bit more before you roll into this. But
want to say hi to Gomez Comic Collector and X Shelly Cakes X for joining us. Thanks very much. Perry Comics asked, did he have a falling out with Dark Horse? Do you know what happened there?
What? I don't know the specifics. I would have to imagine that he did, only because, you know what I think it ties into is that sales got bad. And I think when sales get bad, then people can't do the things they want to do. And so my gut feeling is that sometimes when sales get bad, people blame the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Like Dark Horse is not really a super highly regarded publisher anymore. And
yeah.
People aren't looking out for their stuff, and stores aren't ordering a large number of books. And so
they're not pushing it anymore.
And so I would venture a guess to just assume that had something to do with it. And so maybe he just felt like a fresh start somewhere would reinvigorate the character. And I think so far that's proving to be true.
Because people seem excited about it.
People seem very excited. The 2 local stores by me sold a ton of copies. It's definitely been one of their highest sellers for the week.
Like I said, the shop I went to was sold out. That's why I got this cover.
Stan this year is on an all-out tour of like every convention. I mean, he's to the East Coast like 4 or 5 times this year for conventions, whereas last year he didn't hit the East Coast not once. So I think they're really pushing for the book to be successful, or to at least grab some new people. And I have to say, just from people that I've spoken to on Instagram, or people from my club, guys like Tank. Tank was telling me that he had no history on the book at all. He never read the character before. He picked it up because I always talked so freaking much about it, and he loved it. So I think the idea that you can capture new people with this relaunch is proving to be pretty true.
Yeah, I think, number ones always excite people, and I think that this, like, IDW was pushing this. Like I said, Dark Horse wasn't besides people who were already reading it, who would have ever known where to get, who was putting out Usagi or anything like that. But this was kind of advertised. It was pushed. It was, they're trying to make it successful. And
I had to pre-order all of my Dark Horse Usagi books from online retailers. One of my local comic shops is one of the highest volume comic stores in the state of New Jersey. and they didn't even put Usagi on the shelf because nobody asked for it and it didn't sell.
Right.
When it was with Dark Horse, and once again, like I said today, if I hadn't had it in my pull by the time I got there this afternoon, there wouldn't have been one left for me to buy. So
yeah. So I mean, I hope it stays successful, and like you said, you know, I think when you're looking at the Dark Horse run, if you didn't know that you could pick it up and read a 5-issue, 6-issue, 3-issue series, like everyone expects that if something's on issue 60 or 65 or 70, whatever it is, like, oh, I have so much catching up to, like, I'm not going to bother buying this book because so much nowadays is so ongoing that you have to go back and catch up and trade,
which sucks. That sucks. I'm not a fan of that, to be honest.
Yeah, it does and it doesn't. Like it lends some wonderful stories that are very vast and lengthy, but at the same time, like, yeah, it like, unless you're Brian K. Vaughan, you're putting out Saga, like no one's jumping in the middle of a series at issue 40.
Well, not only that, but the dangers in these long ongoings is that look at what is happening right now with Batman, with Tom King.
Yeah,
they signed him knowing that he had this 100-issue story arc.
they're booting him off it.
Somewhere around 50 with the wedding fiasco, people started to like grab their pitchforks, and it got good and bad and good and bad, and it was sort of on this sales roller coaster for a little while, and now here we are hitting around issue 70, and they're turning around and saying, yeah, he's got like 10 issues left, and then he's off.
Yeah.
So he's not going to finish his storyline. So what if you're someone who's a Batman and Tom King fan, and you've been buying since his issue 1, and you've committed 70 issues to this long storyline, and you're expecting to see it culminate at issue 100, and now you're being told, yeah, sorry, you're not going to see that.
Yeah, it's a real drag especially because he, like, from the beginning, he said, oh, I have this 100-issue story in mind. So it's not like they said, we're going to give you 100 issues. And he said, okay, let me figure out what to do with this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And they even pushed that to 105 only because there's been stories in this run where he didn't write them. Like they did that 2-issue arc where it was like a Flash and Batman story.
Yep, the button.
It like wasn't him. They've done single issues that were like not part of like his continuity storyline, which is weird. Like why do that? Like why mess with the flow of a book? I don't understand.
Well, I mean, the button was because that was like an event thing that they wanted to do. I don't know why. What's up, DS? What's up, Biggie Shack? What's up, Hug Louie Soft? Welcome to the show. Yeah, talking about Batman, I mean, that series has definitely been up and down for me, but things like issues like the Brave and the Mold, one with the Swamp Thing, and the 2-issue arc where Superman and Lois Lane and Batman and Selina like go to that like carnival together.
Yeah,
I loved that. There was a scene in that issue where Superman is talking to Lois and Batman is talking to Selina about the other character and why they're so much better than they are. And I thought it was like this really weird, interesting dynamic when they're like basically saying the same stuff about each other, but in different ways. I thought it was really, really well done myself. And I thought it like summed up the characters really well.
I mean, everyone knows that I like Tom King, so I don't have really anything bad to say. I think that when you commit to a writer on a storyline, you have to be willing to ride the roller coaster that not every issue is going to be a slam dunk. And there's going to be parts of that storyline where you may not be a huge fan, and you just have to be okay with that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of the problem also came because, okay, Sammy, have a great night. Thanks for joining us. What was I saying? So while, Tom King has his haters and people were criticizing the book, Detective, which everyone kind of put as the second tier Batman book, suddenly became the book that everyone was talking about.
I mean, that happens,
Yeah. So
at the end of the day, Batman every month was still in the top 10 twice, because it was bi-weekly Batman. It's not monthly, so that's a factor too, that you have to write enough storyline to keep going every 2 weeks, not every 4 weeks. So everything's condensed, but both issues that came out every month were in the top 10 and normally the top 5 for Diamond sales every single month that Tom King's been on the book. How much more do you want? Like, you're mad that it's not 1 and 2 because it's 4 and 5? Like, is that really something that we need to be upset about? Everyone made this big stink that, like, Immortal Hulk sold more copies. Immortal Hulk is like a fire book right now. It is a good book, but it's also benefiting super heavily from the speculation train. So it's not selling more copies than Batman because that many more people are reading it. It's selling more copies because people out there are buying 2 and 3 copies of each issue, thinking that they're sitting on like a gold mine and they're going to flip them all for some huge profit.
Yeah.
And even with all of that being done, it outsold Batman by like 500 copies. Is that really like,
but I think
kick a writer off a book because of that?
DC hangs.
It doesn't compute for me.
DC hangs its hat on Batman. Like, that's their guy. And if it's not crushing the market, like, what do they have? I mean, they put out good content. I'm not saying they don't, but Batman is their moneymaker. It's their.
But it's still making that money. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, you're going to take Tom King off and put someone new on. Do you really think you're going to hit the 1 and 2 spot because you switched the writer?
Gomez says they got Naomi.
And that's another good point too. DC may hang their hat on Batman, but they invested a ton of chips in Bendis, and it's not paying off.
Well, except that, like, Pearl and United States of whatever have both been optioned. So I mean, I don't know what DC sees out of that other than, like, maybe trade sales.
What does optioned mean in this day and age? I mean, we talk about that all the time, and guys that speculate talk about option. Option means someone wants to buy the rights. It doesn't mean
it's getting made. No. And in fact, companies option stuff so that other companies can't, and they'll just sit on them.
Right. Like, you have X amount of time before you lose the right to make it, and then someone else can swoop in and take it. Like, that's it. That's what happened. So Pearl's not selling that much. United States vs. Murder Inc. didn't sell that much. They're not high-selling books.
No.
Even Naomi, even the spec on Naomi has dropped off. Like, and what has he really done for Superman in Action Comics? Nothing. He's changed storylines and made a kryptonite that makes Superman a black guy. Like, is that really, that's so much better than what Tom King is doing on Batman? Like,
Burbank Kung Fu says, "Oh wait, Key Collector says option. That means my books are worth more." Final.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure he's joking.
If you're living your life off an app, then you need to maybe get out of comic books.
DS says we should all get together and buy up a ton of Cyberforce 1s and then pool our money and option it. That's how you do it. But we've already spent all of our money on Cyberforce 1s.
Yeah, what the heck?
So I mean, yeah, I just think that, like, if I'm thinking from the perspective of an exec at DC, if Batman's not number 1, then it's a failure. I mean, that's not true, but that's, like, probably what they're thinking.
I don't know. I just think I don't know. I don't know what else I should say about this. It gets me flustered. Just because I invested in the book
me too.
before I had any kind of connection to Tom King, I just felt like it's starting fresh. I want to read it. And so I bought every issue from 1 until our current point in time. And I just feel like I'm not going to get my payout. Like my payout wasn't money, my payout wasn't speculation, my payout was commitment to a story. It would be like sitting down to watch Endgame and then 2 hours into the movie they turn it off.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
how I feel. Like that's
Yeah.
how I feel because I've
Sure.
gotten 2/3 of the way through the story, and then you're just like, sorry, man, we're done. We're done here. Closing time.
Comics with Bueller, thank you for joining us. Barbarian says, don't listen to issues. He likes rabbit books. TJ says, it's worth more today. It's packing material tomorrow. And DS says that DC is done because Liefeld said so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Liefeld is the Kanye of the comic world.
I think you guys are trying to get under my skin tonight, and it's working.
They're doing what you do. They're doing your job in the chat.
I don't like it. I don't like it one bit.
Now you know how it feels. I want to very briefly talk about this book. We were talking about it right before I went on there. Chris has not read it, but this is Faithless number 3. This book is a porno, but a very well told one. I am enjoying it thoroughly, in spite of and because of the porn. So there you go. Pick up Faithless.
But it's like a lesbian demon porn, right?
Hell yeah. Yep.
I think it's important to add that part. That really ties in a lot of people, like porn, lesbians, demons.
It's like the Venn diagram. It's like me in the middle.
Yeah, like just everything overlaps to be like this for Alec.
Yeah. Constance explained, thanks for joining us. He said he got the Faithless 3 naughty cover on eBay today. Yeah, I need to get that because I got all the other naughty ones, and they are filthy. Like the interior stuff in this book, especially this issue, has been pretty risque. But man, those bagged covers. Is Jenny Frison really doing the next one?
I saw the bag cover for issue number 1, and it was pretty intense. But I haven't seen 2 or 3 look like.
So I have the second print of issue 1 and issue 2. I will show them to you when we get off there because I will get banned from YouTube.
I don't think you should show them on air.
Barbarian says I would never buy that book. It's not in the Key Collector app. Comics Explained said, is there a second print of issue 2 bag cover? I don't know. I've not seen one yet, but if there is, count me in.
Wait, so there's a second print bag cover for issue 1?
Yes.
And it's a different naughty cover?
Yes, and it is way worse. Or better, depending on how you look at it.
I can't afford to cover buy anymore, but
I mean,
bagged covers always make me stop and go like, but it could be really cool.
Yeah, what? It could be anything under there.
And then I have to buy 2 because I want one that's not open. So it's just like this big, the vicious cycle of spending money I don't need to spend.
Second print 1 in 500 naughty cover. What? Oh, I think he's making a joke. Jason says second print of issue 1 might be my favorite. Yeah, it's real nice. So anyway, we didn't really have a debate topic this week, but I guess we kind of had one anyway. Talking about Tom King and Batman. You said you wanted to talk about something else, or that kind of like cover it?
I don't know if we have enough time to talk about the other thing I wanted to talk about. Maybe save that for another show.
Okay, do a separate show just on it.
Yeah, that might be a better idea because I don't think like 10 minutes is enough time for me to
dig into what you want to dig into. Fair enough.
But I mean, what
we can do Comics is Therapy issue 3.
Yeah, that's basically. I think that would be more fitting to do a Comics and Therapy like full episode and talk about it. But yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, is there any other stuff out right now that you're reading that you're like really hyped on, or anything that you're looking forward to?
I don't know if you heard me talk about Little Bird.
Listen, Little Bird Jubilee Sky Tigers. we got it.
That pretty much sums me up.
Well, new issue of that came out today, right?
Yeah, number 4. I haven't read it yet, but
there's only one issue left.
Yeah, I know. It's going to make me very sad. I don't know what I'm going to talk about after that. Terry Moore is doing this really weird thing where so Strangers in Paradise was completely standalone. Then he did Echo, which was completely standalone. And then he did Rachel Rising, which was completely standalone. And Motor Girl, which is completely standalone. And now he's doing this Strangers in Paradise 25, which ties all of these things together. And now he's releasing this series called 5 Years, which is issue 2 right back there, which is about them trying to like prevent the end of the world with this huge bomb that's going to go off based on the technologies in Echo. It's kind of cool that he's doing that, but at the same time, I feel like it's out of character for what he does. So I'm still trying to kind of catch my footing on that one. But still enjoying it because I like his work a lot.
I've never read any of that stuff, so I think when it comes to some of the indie stuff that you're into, I don't think I've ever read any of it. Even some of like the more popular ones. Like I've never read a single issue of Bone, and I know that probably makes you upset.
No, I mean, if you accepted gifts, I would send you a omnibus, but
I like accepting gifts, so
you should go to your local library and see if you can get it.
Library.
I will say this about Bone, and I was talking to someone at a comic shop about it just the other day. It starts off and it seems like, oh, it's just this silly book about these silly looking characters doing this silly stuff. And it kind of is at first. But if you stick with it, it's like the only thing I can compare it to is Lord of the Rings. It's like that epic and that much of a like huge feeling of importance of this world. I don't know. It's great. Hey, John's Comics with Kids is in the. Well, I mean, then maybe you won't like it, but maybe what you hated about Lord of the Rings would not carry over in this. John's Comics with Kids is in the chat. We actually started about 5 minutes late, John. He said, I assume it started on time without me. If you're driving home, you should concentrate on driving and not text. Sam I Am Comics also jumped in. What's up? Welcome. I don't know. Like, I almost started talking about this the other night on Comic Core when I was on that show, but it's so hard to get a topic started because it just moves so quickly. I feel like I don't know if I'm not enjoying reading comics as much anymore or if comics are just bad. But I just like seem to be like just not enjoying 90% of books that I'm reading. And I see other people reviewing the same books and like being like, oh, this is great. I really enjoyed this. And I'm like, oh, really? I thought it was horrible. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just like getting to be a grump in my old age.
I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely think there's really a wealth of comics out there right now that are not necessary or are telling sort of just like muddled storylines that just are not necessary. But I do think that there's definitely some good stuff out there. Some of it's sort of surprising. Like, for example, I've not ever really been a huge Daredevil fan, and I'm finding Daredevil to be immensely enjoyable.
Yeah, the current run's great. And like I'm not saying like there's nothing I enjoy, but I feel like I used to be able to pretty much read most things and like get some enjoyment out of them. And now it's kind of the opposite where most things I don't want to even finish. Tina says I'm not old. I'm pretty old. Um, John's Comics with Kids calls me the anti-comic equation. Criminal is good. You're right. Comics with Explained. Barbarian Kung Fu says, my palette for literature has been altered by Little Bird. That is the case.
I think TJ's right too. I think a lot of the stuff out there is just, it's what can we make cool covers for to sell it. You know, I just think there's not a lot of commitment to good stories, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
I think that ties into like what I had to say about Tom King, and I think it's probably what we're seeing with a lot of other books. Look at what's going on with X-Men, with relaunching X-Men. I think as much as you could be excited, I know there's a lot of Hickman fans out there. It just shows a lack of commitment to what they're doing, and to someone who reads books or buys books or invests money in books, I think it sours you a little bit on like, why should I buy something that you could just throw in the trash like 15 issues from now?
Yeah, and like not only what a kick in the ass for fans who have been reading X-Men, but like what a kick in the ass for Rosenberg, who's like been,
He's,
you know, like
he's hitting a stride and people are really digging it, and then it's like, sorry, dude.
Yeah, we're gonna just reset everything you've done. So thanks, but yeah, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean that sucks, and it hurts fans as much as it hurts, you know, the people who work on these books. So
I'm still gonna, but you know, at the end of the day, I'm still gonna buy the stupid Hickman X-Men. So
well,
I guess
see,
screw me, right?
Not. Like I'm not. So and that's different for me. So I think over time they're gonna hurt themselves because people are gonna start kind of just changing their habits. Because what it is it's not that I don't want to read it. It's just that I don't no longer want to invest my money in single issues of stuff that I feel like um, could be a flash in the pan or could be irrelevant in a year from now. And I've not generally been a big trade guy in my lifetime, but other than books that I really am committed to or love the characters, I find no reason to buy single issues anymore of a lot of stuff for that exact reason, that it's so easy to just shuffle teams or relaunch a book. It's to me, it's like sort of sickening. Like, did you see that they're relaunching Spider-Gwen?
No.
So, right, Spider-Gwen came out. Did you guys do Spider-Gwen for book club?
We did Ghost Spider. It was our very first book.
Yeah,
and it's
terrible. Called like Spider. It's called Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider, right? And they launched it, and it's crap. It's a crap book, and nobody buys it, and the sales are terrible. And now they're relaunching it in August, and it's not called Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider. Now it's just called Ghost Spider. And it's the entire same creative team that's currently on the book.
See, that's something I don't understand, is that you have this character that's like really hot, or was at least at a point. Spider-Gwen was like the bee's knees. And then the Spider-Verse movie came out, everybody loves it. And why don't you put top tier talent on a book like that? It's because it doesn't matter. Because Spider-Man,
people are going to buy it regardless.
People are going to buy it regardless, and more so than that, a book like that is a trade book. The people who are reading, most of the audience they're trying to draw in from movies and stuff like that, are reading trades. They aren't reading single issues. So they can put out 6 terrible issues and put it in a trade, and it's like, sucker, you just paid $20 for that instead of, you know, buying one issue and finding out that it's terrible. Am I crazy for thinking that way? Am I being the anti-joy equation again?
No, I think it's like that's my point that I'm making too. Is just like they're shuffling out a lot of crap. They're just throwing tons of shit at the wall, trying to see what's gonna stick. And if it doesn't stick, they just pile more shit around it and throw it again. You know, like they want so desperately too for certain characters to work that they will keep on shoving it down your throat. And
with new number one after new number one.
Exactly. Like, how many times do we need a new Captain Marvel #1? Some point, someone's going to have to wake up and just say, regardless of what your personal agendas are, people just are not digging Carol Danvers. Sorry. You know, how many more number ones do we need of Miss Marvel? Sorry, man. Everyone wants a first appearance of Kamala Khan, but nobody cares about her series.
Because it's not written well.
Right, but that's my point. If you're so determined for a character to work, then you need to force talented people to work on it.
We got some funny stuff going on in the chat. First of all, Seawood19, what's up, newsstand? Comics Mix Explained said maybe if there were some Spider-Man bag covers. Comic Case in the house. John's Comics with Kids said, I totally agree with all of that, but Major X is excellent.
John, I'm gonna ban you in a minute.
Yeah.
How
about everyone, just to be clear, John's joking. And even if he's not, I'm gonna make sure that that's clear because he's not allowed back on the show if he's not joking.
He is definitely joking.
Yeah, he's definitely joking. All right. See you later, Perry. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I just think, yeah, they're just doing everything wrong. Just make good books. Not that hard. There's like talented people out there.
Sometimes you just need to get the right person on the right project. Like not every director is going to win an Oscar for every movie they do.
For sure.
You just need to get the right people on the right stuff. That's all I'm saying. If you're so committed to a character working, you have to put on someone you know is good, not just someone who's passionate about the character. Because passion about a character does not necessarily translate into a good product.
Absolutely.
Right? It's why DC movies can't make $1 and Marvel movies crush, because they're putting people on projects where the project and the person work together. You know, everyone and their mom could say that they love Zack Snyder visuals, or Zack Snyder's really passionate about Batman and Superman, but the reality is he just didn't make good movies.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't good movies and they weren't good Superman movies. Like, they were neither.
Right. So, but that's a guy who was super passionate, who has a background of making quality visual movies. That doesn't mean it's going to work. And it's really frustrating to me to see a relaunch on a title that is working. Why not take a good guy, like a good writer like Hickman, and put him on a project that isn't doing well?
Yeah.
Instead, you're going to, cut off the head of a guy who's writing a good book, and then do what? Take him and shove him on something he doesn't want to do?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's Jonathan Hickman. He is, I would say, maybe not on par with Bendis, but like he's a huge name in the industry, especially among fans, right? I would say.
I hate Bendis, so I don't know if that's a good comparison.
But I just mean like not as far as quality, but as far as like recognized name, like he has a superstar.
He has a really strong following, and he has people that really appreciate his body of work. Yeah.
So you could take Hickman and put him on literally any book and it would sell.
Yes.
And you could put any writer on X-Men and it's going to sell.
To a degree, yeah.
I mean, it may do a lot better if it's telling a great story, but it's X-Men, so comic shops are just going to order it because people come in.
Especially if you've condensed down to one main X-Men title. Part of why Uncanny is doing so good is because Uncanny is really all you need to worry about. I know there's like the next gen X-Men Age of Apocalypse crap going on right now. But those are all like sort of mini series books. They're not ongoing. So like when they had X-Men Red, X-Men Blue, X-Men Gold, that was a disaster because nobody was ordering any of those because they were all like blah.
Yeah.
But every store orders a ton of copies of Uncanny every time it comes out. Like they didn't need to cut it off now to bring Hickman in to write 2 new books. Like it wasn't necessary.
Yeah. I mean,
and it also feels like a push because they're bringing him in to write 2 books.
Yep.
So you want to relaunch and do 100 covers for each of those, and there's 2 number ones, and I don't know, man.
But like going back to your point of like, not every creator is going to be great on every project. he might be great on X-Men, and we'll have to give him a shot. But why not put him on Miss Marvel? Like, if you really want to push these new characters, put top tier talent on him. Put him on Ghost Spider.
Yeah. Well, listen, I agree 100%. I understand that you want to let talented writers work on things that they want to work on. Like, I understand that. Donny Cates, you want to let him do Guardians and Venom because he wants to do those things. But I think there has to be a trade-off, right? Like, what's a good example of this? It's not really comic books, but it's a good example. When Mike Myers wanted to make Austin Powers, right? And he went to the studio and he wanted to make Austin Powers. They were like, "We'll give you Austin Powers, but then you owe us one."
Right.
And that's why he had to make the Cat in the Hat. And he hated it and he was miserable and it was uncomfortable getting in all of that makeup and prosthetics. He had to do it and he still went and did his job. So when you take a guy like Donny Cates and you let him do Venom and Absolute Carnage and Guardians of the Galaxy and you let him touch all this other stuff, what's wrong with saying, like, dude, you have to write Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
You have to give us like 15 issues of Captain Marvel or 12 issues. You have to give us a year's worth of Captain Marvel because we let you do all the passion projects you wanted to do.
Yeah, and it's the same thing.
Like, what's wrong with that?
Another example is Vin Diesel. When Tokyo Drift came out, he was like not interested in doing that movie, and the studio said, "We need you to do a cameo in it," and he said, "Give me the rights to whatever that character is from Pitch Black."
Oh, Riddick.
Yeah, he said, "Give me the rights to Riddick, and I'll do it for you." So he could like make his video games and make his other movies. So it's the same. It's the same thing, right? It's like, yeah, it totally makes sense. Say you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours.
Yeah. So Hickman went to them and said, "I want to do these X-Men books, but in order for me to do them, you have to cancel every other X-Men book. There can only be two. There can only be these two. There can be no other X-Men." And Marvel turned around and just said, "Okay."
Because they know it's going to be huge and it's going to sell 1 million copies and it's going to be the number one book month after month.
But my point is, as a publisher, why are you not taking that opportunity to negotiate?
Right, and say, okay, we'll do that for you, but write Ghost Spider.
But you're going to owe us 12 issues of another book that we pick when we pick it.
Yep.
Why not? What's wrong with that? I just don't understand. Like, if you're supposed to be a business, but they make tons of decisions that are just poor business decisions. At the end of the day, and I'm not knocking. I love Jim Lee. I grew up on Jim Lee. Maybe Jim Lee's not the guy that should be running a publisher.
No, just because you're a good artist doesn't mean you know how to run anything.
Or like, who the hell is CB Cebulski? And why the hell is he the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics? The guy hasn't done much of quality work in his career as a writer, except for when he pretended to be a Japanese guy and lied to his bosses about it. And then somehow, instead of getting fired, they made him like the editor-in-chief. And he's done like nonsensical stuff at every turn. Like, what's going on here? This is the best we could do at the two biggest publishers of comic books in the world. This is the best we can do.
I think it's kind of just like for something like Jim Lee, it's like, oh, it's your turn type of thing. It's like, oh, Jeff Johns got his run because he was a big shot, and Jim Lee said, probably when he came to DC, he's like, hey, I'll do a bunch of art for you, but I want to advance in the company, and he has no business being an editor-in-chief.
None whatsoever. They should just make Rob Liefeld the editor-in-chief of everything.
Because he knows
everything.
He knows what sells.
He knows what sells. He should be running Marvel. He's probably, what's sad is that he's probably more qualified to run Marvel than Cebulski is.
Probably. I mean, he ran Awesome Comics into the ground.
Yeah.
But at least he started it.
He's got experience under his belt. He
co-founded Image, but so did Jim Lee. That doesn't mean anything. Well, this has been fun.
As always.
Leave it to us to bring down the room.
Sorry, guys. I can bring up the room. I can bring up the room real quick with some positive stuff.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
So for those of you who don't know, I'm part of the Symbiote Comic Book Club. It's a bunch of guys, mostly on IG, and some guys who do some YouTube shows like Tank, Barbarian, Kung Fu, Mr. Garrel, Necro God Comics, and we have a exclusive book coming out with Vault Comics. It's a new series that's launching in August called Resonant. So issue number 1 is going to be coming out. It's a custom cover that we're doing, but we're going to be selling the book entirely for charity. So 100% of the money that we make from that book sales is going to go to charity. So look out for that coming. Get in touch with anyone from the club if you're interested in ordering a book, if you're interested in ordering multiple books, if you have a shop that's interested in ordering books to sell in the shop, and we'd be happy to take some orders and make some money for some people.
Very cool. Always generous, this guy.
Have to be. I'm trying to buy my way out of hell, so it's going to take a bit, but one charity at a time.
I'm doomed, so doomed already. But that's awesome. Yeah, check that out. I'm really excited for it. I'm gonna buy like 5 copies. Gray Matter Hulk says issues in Baltimore for con.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we went live. I think both of us are planning on being in Baltimore. I think right now that's the plan for me to be in Baltimore this year.
I'm definitely.
Ask me again when it gets closer. I'm not even sure what I'm doing tomorrow, so Baltimore might be a little far away.
In October, yeah. It is. I've got a hotel book, so I'm going to be there, or there's going to be an empty hotel room at that hotel. Speaking of Tank and Chris, we next Saturday night, I believe, we are doing an auction. Tank has this absolutely massive collection that he's going through. He sent me some stuff that he's planning on selling. It's going to be real nice. I'm going to release a preview video next week, middle of the week sometime. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'll do some impressions, maybe. My infamous terrible impressions.
Tank's selling all this nice Silver Age stuff, and I'm just going to try to sell the crappy crap that I don't want anymore.
Yeah, same. I've got like 3 lots prepared, and it's just gonna be like, okay, Tank, what do you got next?
I'm gonna sell boxes, guys. Mystery boxes, issues boxes, issues from issues.
Issues from issues.
Boxes with stuff in them. It may not even be all comic books. It could just be stuff.
I am intentionally breaking up my runs and putting them in different boxes. Thank you, Big O. I said, love the conversation tonight, fellas. Tina, can't wait for the auction. I also, speaking of auctions, have back here, I know I've been talking about this Spawn run that my buddy has. I finally have all the books in my possession. I'm going to try to do something before I move, because I'm sure as hell not moving all these Spawn books with me. So I'm going to try to blast through something really quickly and try to get him as much money as I can for his little baby girl who's going to be here in a couple months. So that's kind of for charity in a way.
Yeah, that counts. That's charity. That's to help someone out.
Okay.
Help a little kitty.
We'll count it.
Yeah, count it.
So I don't know when that's going to be. I did not sell the new 52 Batman run, Gray Matter Hulk. DM me on Instagram if you want to talk about it. Speaking of Batman, next week we are, I believe, going to do Batman Dan number 3.
It'll be me and Alec. John's not invited again.
Yep, this is the new crew. We're going to make a lot of dick jokes and then get really dark about the comic industry and our personal lives again.
We didn't get too personal today, and it didn't get too dark, so I think we're okay.
Yeah, we were just grumping.
But tune in for Comics and Therapy episode 3 coming soon.
Coming soon. And I think we had been in talks. I don't know if this is going to be possible for a little bit with both of us moving, but we want to do another charity auction soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably going to happen after we both move. So
yeah, well, most definitely. So maybe like August, September.
Yeah, I would say August is probably fair. Let's say August.
All right.
August.
August it is. Charity auction from these two jamokes coming at you. And you know what? This time I am going to say if you'd like to donate, do so, because last time I didn't advertise for donations and we got a ton. So I think if we say it this time, maybe either we'll get more or people will be insulted and won't send us anything. So
either one is fine.
Either one is fine, because I was absolutely overwhelmed with the amount of shipping I had to do last time. TJ just messaged me and said there's a new series called Alpha Flight True North coming out in September. Well, be doing that one. Sorry, John. It has been decided.
Oh God, why?
Hey man,
why?
Don't hate on the Great White North. We don't have a guest next week yet. So if you're especially passionate about Batwangs and censored Harley Quinn boobs, and you want to talk about Batman Damn 3, hit myself or John up on Instagram. Ben Compton's working on his Batman Beyond run. I thankfully bought them months ago. Because those books, all of a sudden, people care about. I don't know why.
Ridiculous.
Spec.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just got my blood pressure down. Let's just play some Sky Tigers and say goodnight.
Oh yeah, I gotta cue that up. I forgot that I'm on my channel, and I can do that. But like, it's not as fun without pissing John off with it. But you know, I'll still do it. Because why the heck not? All right, you got anything else you want to plug?
Nope, that's it. You did it.
Okay. Story Comic Core on Monday. We're going to be finishing Y, and then announcing hopefully our new show, because Story Comic Core was not working for me. I don't know if other people enjoyed it. Sorry, I think our new show is going to be better. Thank you for joining us, and by us I mean me, and John in spirit, I guess. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you and everyone in the chat. Throw up them horns. This has been New Comic Book Day Book Club. I think 30 episodes in, I get that right. Thanks for joining us. Never turn your back to the ocean. Bye.